Okay, so you're thinking about maybe trying out this whole Airbnb thing, right? But like, how does it actually compare to renting out your place long term?
That's the big question, isn't it? It really depends on what you're looking for as a property owner.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to be diving into today, figuring out the pros and cons so you can decide what's best for you.
Airbnb versus traditional renting, it all comes down to your priorities, I think.
Right. Like, are you trying to squeeze every last dollar out of your property, or is it more about having the flexibility to, use it yourself sometimes?
Exactly. And those are just some of the things we'll be exploring today.
Awesome. So let's jump right in. The first thing that caught my eye in our notes was the potential for higher returns with Airbnb. It
Oh, yeah, definitely.
says here that Airbnb hosts could potentially earn 2 to 3 times more revenue compared to traditional long-term rentals.
That's right. And, it's not unheard of.
Triple the rent, though. That
Yeah.
sounds almost too good to be true.
Well, it's important to remember that those higher earnings come with more work and more risk as well.
Okay, so it's not just like magic money.
Definitely not. Think of it more like running a small business. You're responsible for managing bookings, setting prices, and making sure your property is always guest ready.
I see. So there's definitely more involved.
But for many property owners, the potential rewards are worth the extra effort.
That makes sense. So it's all about weighing those pros and cons, right?
Exactly. Now, speaking of pros, one of the big advantages of Airbnb is the frequent access you have to your property.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It says here that Airbnb hosts can access their properties for things like cleaning, maintenance, or even personal use.
Yeah. And that's a major difference from long-term rentals where you often have limited access once a tenant moves in.
It's true. I remember when I had a long-term tenant, it was like pulling teeth just to get in there to fix a leaky faucet.
Yeah, it can definitely be a hassle. With
Mm,
Airbnb, you have much more control over when and why you access your property.
that makes sense. So more control with Airbnb.
Got it. And that control also ties into the flexibility that Airbnb offers.
Ah, yes. Flexibility. Another big plus, according to our notes.
Absolutely. If you try out Airbnb for a few months and decide it's not for you, you can easily switch back to long-term renting.
Exactly. Try doing that with a tenant locked into a year-long lease.
Right. Airbnb gives you the agility to adapt to changing market conditions or your own personal needs.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal here. But let's be real for a second.
Sure.
Isn't property maintenance more of a headache with Airbnb and all those short-term guests coming and going?
Actually, it can be quite the opposite. Think of it this way. With frequent guest turnover, you're essentially getting a fresh set of eyes on your property every few days.
That's true. I guess I never thought about it that way.
Plus, cleaning crews are in there regularly, so you're more likely to catch minor maintenance issues before they turn into major problems.
So it's like built-in preventative maintenance. Interesting.
Exactly. With long-term tenants, those small issues can go unnoticed for months, leading to bigger and more expensive repairs down the line.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about wear and tear? Wouldn't all those different people staying in your place lead to more damage?
Not necessarily. Airbnb guests are often out and about exploring, spending less time in the property than a typical long-term renter.
Oh, that's a good point.
And of course, the regular cleanings between guests help to keep things in good shape.
So maybe wear and tear isn't as big of a concern as I initially thought.
Right. It's something to consider, but it's not always a deal breaker.
Okay, cool. Now let's talk about the financial side of things beyond the potential for higher rental income. Our notes mention some potential tax advantages for Airbnb hosts.
Yeah, definitely. There are certain deductions you can take advantage of when you're running an Airbnb business.
Like what kind of deductions are we talking about here?
Well, for example, you can deduct expenses related to furnishing and maintaining the property cleaning costs and even a portion of your mortgage interest.
Oh, wow. That's pretty significant.
It can be, but
Mhm.
remember, tax laws can be complicated, so it's always best to consult with a professional to make sure you're doing everything correctly.
Definitely sound advice.
Mm.
And speaking of finances, our notes also mention that Airbnb offers some kind of insurance protection for hosts.
Yes, they do. It's called host protection insurance, and it's a really important safety net.
Okay. What exactly does it cover?
It covers things like accidental damage caused by guests, and it also provides liability coverage in case someone gets injured on your property.
So it's peace of mind for both the host and the guest.
Exactly. It's there to protect you from those unexpected events that can sometimes happen when you're renting out your property.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground today. Airbnb definitely has some appealing advantages, especially for someone new to renting out their property. but it also comes with its own set of challenges and responsibilities.
Exactly. There's no one-size-fits-all answer when it comes to choosing between Airbnb and long-term renting.
Right. So as we wrap up here, what's the one key takeaway you would leave our listeners with?
I would say think carefully about what you value most as a property owner. Is it maximizing your earning potential, having flexibility, or minimizing the hassles of property management?
Those are great questions.
The answers to those questions will guide you towards the right choice for your individual circumstances.
And hey, if you're still on the fence after weighing all the pros and cons, you can always try out Airbnb for a short period and see how it feels.
That's a great idea. It's a low-risk way to experience the platform firsthand and see if it's a good fit for you.
Perfect. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. I hope this has given you a better understanding of the differences between Airbnb and long-term renting.
I hope so too. And remember, the world of renting is constantly evolving, so it's important to stay informed and adapt to the changing landscape.
Great advice. Thanks for joining us today. And to all our listeners out there, happy renting.
Happy renting.